Most mornings, I am still half awake when my phone starts lighting up. Before I have even poured my coffee, there are overnight Wall Street movements to check, SGX disclosures to skim, and broker notes piling up in my inbox, and I am doing all of this across half a dozen different apps. I am trying to piece together how a tech sell-off in New York, or some surprise rate decision, might actually touch my own dividend portfolio. It is an exhausting routine that repeats itself every single morning. And let's be honest, most mornings, the real risks and opportunities get buried under all that noise before we have even had a proper sip of coffee. This breakdown is my own imagining of what a smarter morning could look like, written in response to the Longbridge Community Campaign. Let us walk through how an assistant should actually work. The daily routine starts with a massive amount of fragmented data hitting your screen before you can even get out of bed. You are opening one application to check how the US markets closed overnight, another to see what announcements have hit the Singapore exchange, and then checking your email for the latest analyst research notes. Managing half a dozen platforms just to get a basic pulse on the market creates immediate friction. It wastes critical time during the pre-market window when clarity is needed most. This is where I come in, tracking the broader market conversation before Iggy runs his forensic numbers on any specific name. The real danger is that you end up reactively skimming headlines rather than focusing on structural risks. We need a system that cuts through the app clutter immediately. When a tech sell-off hits New York or a central bank announces a surprise rate decision, the absolute priority is understanding the immediate link to your capital. Most general financial news platforms will give you broad market commentary, but they fail to show how these global macroeconomic shifts filter down to local income portfolios. Without a direct translation layer, critical structural threats are completely lost in the daily noise. The numbers that actually matter to your personal wealth end up getting buried before your morning coffee is even ready. It forces retail investors to operate on guesswork when they should be acting on verified data. My first real interaction of the day happens well before the market opens at 9 a.m. when I am going through my pre-market briefing. Right now, most financial tools just dump flat summaries at me. A minor management reshuffle and a genuine earnings miss get the same urgent tone, which tells me absolutely nothing about what actually deserves my attention. What I actually want is an assistant that is honest about what it is sure of and where it is guessing. We do not need louder headlines, we need a tool that understands the varying weights of data. Instead of a flat list of headlines, I want my morning briefing to flag how reliable each piece of information actually is. Say an analyst house puts out a fresh note on an industrial landlord, I do not just want the new target price repeated back to me. I want to know whether that thesis is built on confirmed lease renewals or on someone's optimistic guess about future occupancy. That distinction matters immensely. It is the difference between spending my morning on something structurally real and spending it chasing noise dressed up as insight. I don't need an assistant that sounds impressive. I need one that's honest about where it's shaky. The same way I'd trust a friend more if she said, "I'm not totally sure about this part," instead of stating everything with the same confident voice. True utility comes from transparency, not artificial perfection. If an AI tool treats a highly speculative projection the exact same way it treats a legally binding financial filing, it is a liability, not an asset. Knowing exactly where the data becomes thin is the cornerstone of defensive investing. The second part of my ideal day happens when breaking news hits mid-morning, and I need to work out fast whether it actually touches anything I own. If a utility company suddenly announces it is selling off an infrastructure asset, the usual news alert just gives me the transaction value and leaves me to do the math myself. It tells me nothing about the direct operational consequence. A smart assistant must instantly bridge the gap between a high-level headline and the specific allocations inside my portfolio. When looking at an asset sale, I need to know what that transaction does to distributions per unit and what it does to net asset value. I want an assistant that maps that headline straight onto my own portfolio and actually shows it's working. Does this change the group's overall leverage? Will the cash get swallowed up paying down debt, or does it end up coming back to me as a special dividend? I am not interested in just the transaction value. I need the full income story. That is when I do my own gut check. I compare whatever the AI is telling me against something concrete I already understand, like what my own fixed deposit is paying me right now, or how the distribution yield has actually behaved historically. So what does this mean for you? It means you use your established baseline to work out whether something has genuinely changed about the income story, or whether it is just an accounting adjustment dressed up to look bigger than it is. By early afternoon, I have usually stopped watching what I already own and started poking at some bigger idea instead. It normally starts small. My daughter mentioned data centers to me over dinner last week. Something about AI needing enormous amounts of computing power, and asked whether that was something worth looking into through our own REITs here. Turning a casual household observation into a proper investment investigation requires moving efficiently from a vague thought to an actionable shortlist. If I typed AI compute infrastructure into a normal search engine, I would get the same handful of big popular funds everyone else gets, with none of the actual detail underneath. What I want instead is a shortlist specific enough that I can actually push back on it. I want to be able to ask pointed questions, like which of these trusts have master leases expiring soon, and which ones are carrying real foreign exchange exposure. I need honest answers, not a polished corporate brochure. A good assistant tells me plainly which REITs face lease renewals in a tough market. That's what turns a passing dinner table comment into something I've actually investigated properly. Handing me a list of popular stocks is the easy part. What I actually need is a tool that doesn't flinch when I start asking the awkward questions, because a short list that can't survive me pushing back on it wasn't much of a short list to begin with. My last stop of the day is after the market closes at 5 p.m., when I would normally just be glancing at my transaction log and checking whether I made or lost money. But a flat gains and losses summary does not actually tell me anything about whether my decisions that day were any good. If we only look at the final dollar figure, we miss the opportunity to evaluate our process. A proper review requires a comprehensive look at the choices made throughout the trading hours. What I would rather have is something that audits my thinking, not just my portfolio, mine, and the assistant's both. I want it to walk back through the day and be honest about where its own earlier confidence held up and where it did not. If it flagged a cost pressure that morning and the price fell further than it expected, I want it to own that miss, not quietly move on. True process optimization requires reviewing the entire day step by step. That is the part that actually matters to me. I am not just checking whether I made money today. So what does this mean for you? It means checking whether I was right for the right reasons and slowly learning how much I can actually trust this tool over time. This disciplined approach keeps the real judgment sitting entirely with me and not with the assistant. None of this is about handing over my judgment or accepting whatever the AI tells me. The whole point still rests on the same cautious habits I have always used, the ones I had long before any of this AI talk started. No amount of clever technology replaces the basic habit of asking one more question, checking the actual numbers myself, and comparing them against something real I already understand, like my fixed deposit rate, what my daughter is telling me she is hearing, or the price of fish at the wet market this week versus last. The best AI tool doesn't decide for me. It's honest enough and clear enough that I can still make the call myself, the same way I always have. True financial independence relies entirely on independent verification. A digital assistant is there to clean the data and highlight structural details, not to sign off on your hard-earned capital. The ultimate responsibility for every position remains at the human layer. Angela's content summarizes publicly available market news, analyst research, and earnings data for informational purposes. Iggy provides the investing iguana's forensic ratings and analytical verdicts. Angela's role is to recap noteworthy developments across the SGX market without applying analytical filters or investment recommendations. Always read primary sources and consult the MAS-licensed financial advisor before making investment decisions. This content is produced for educational and informational purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. I am a retail investor who applies forensic analysis to my own portfolio and shares that process publicly. Nothing here constitutes a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any security, and no specific target prices or personalized financial advice are offered. All data is sourced from public filings and verified sources. Where data is unverified, it is explicitly flagged. All investments carry risk, including the potential loss of principal, and past performance is not indicative of future results. If you are making investment decisions involving CPF, SRS, or personal capital, please conduct your own due diligence or consult a MAS licensed financial advisor before committing funds.